Welcome to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax. Except you, that person driving. Sit up and keep your eyes on the road. Your ears, though, can still listen as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, the New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
And me, I'm Rob. My favorite subject. Let's talk about those tight ends.
Oh, you love a good tight end, I know. Oh, yeah. Who doesn't love a good tight end?
Wraps everything up.
Oh, yeah. All kinds, all-purpose use there. Blocking,
Yeah.
receiving.
I love a tight end who can do it all.
All righty, guys. So, yeah, we are on to the tight ends here with this episode here. We do have 10 tight ends for you to go over, which is, I know, not enough tight ends for Rob because he just wants more and more tight ends, but we got 10 tight ends here for you. So we're going to go over the best of the Giants tight ends here. So let's start off with number 10. Number 10 didn't spend a lot of time with the Giants per se. That's actually the tail end of his career. Probably actually better off known as the head coach of the New York Jets later on in his career. Talking about the one, the only Joe Walton. Originally drafted by Washington back in 1957. So, yeah, we're going back into Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine for this one here, folks. Played with the Giants at the end of his career, so played from 61 to 63, which makes the math very easy, just 3 seasons. In those 3 seasons, 37 games, 27 starts, 1,321 receiving yards, 17 TDs. In that time period, he had the 5th most receiving yards amongst tight ends in his time as a Giant. So one of those guys you don't hear about very often, probably because of the fact he only played 3 seasons. Again, better off known as a head coach because he was the head coach of the Jets back from 83 to 89. His head coaching record, though, is below 500. So not really the guy that you talk about too much there as far as that. But still, the guy was a scout or coach anywhere from 1965 to 2013. That's a pretty dang good long career as a
longevity
coach, whether it's a position coach, college, pros, whatever the case may be. So kudos to him on that one there. Because he basically, up until the point that he only had 8 years after he stopped coaching that he passed. So I mean, he pretty much played and then coached basically for the majority of his life there, pretty much there. So, but with the Giants, again, like I said, small time period, again, a time period that the Giants weren't the best at, so you don't hear too much of him. But anytime you're in the top 5 at your position in a statistical category like that,
where your teams like the Oakland Raiders,
where teams playing like crap those 3 years, that's a pretty damn good stretch there. And in the end, just had a 7-year career, was a second round pick for the Washington back in the day there. But again, good short stretch with us there overall. Got to give credit to a guy who was doing receiving back when
that was the blocking position.
And it's weird because if you look back, it was purely a receiving or purely a blocking. There wasn't the hybrid tight ends like you see nowadays. That's the weird part about it, because we're going to go over one later on. It's going to be very high in the list, and this guy was the size of a wide receiver. I don't think he was blocking anybody. Maybe just blocking the running back mid a gust of wind as he hit that. I got it. Next up, we have number 9, Gary Shirk, who also played college at Morehead State. Giant fans probably remember that college. Talk about Texas Southern. We have 2 Texas Southern guys. Now 2 Morehead State guys. Giants are like the kings of getting people from like weird colleges you don't hear about. I couldn't even say where Morehead State is. I think it's Kentucky, but I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't even know. To be honest.
So when he graduated there, he played 2 seasons for the Memphis Southmen of the WFL, one of the alternate leagues they had back then. Then
Kentucky.
played for. Oh, see, I told you that was Kentucky. Then he played with the Giants from 1976 to 1982. So he was there for the very beginning of the rise, and unfortunately didn't quite make it to the Super Bowl years there. But he was there for the beginning of the Parcells and his alumni quarterback there in Phil Simms. So in his time period with the Giants, 101 games, 62 starts, 1,640 yards, and 11 touchdowns. But listen, anytime you make 7-year stretch with a team,
You're doing something right.
yeah, you got some talent at that point to be on for that many years with one team.
And not for everyone out there, I'm sure you guys are all big football fans, but I'm sure there's some of you out there that don't really realize that, like Drew was saying earlier, tight end is there's different points of it. Like you got your Darren Wallers today, and then you just got your blocking tight ends. You got guys who get you 800 yards. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's like your third, not the third, but he's an extra lineman that can help out your run game, your pass game. And sometimes like these numbers don't show how good this player was.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because you can't really show, hey, he blocked X amount of players.
Yeah, 100%. And unfortunately, those tend to be the unsung heroes, of the team. There's only one that I can think of off the top of my head that the Giants fans really hold with esteem there. And we're going to get to him later on. But, there's still, in the end, there's got to be, some respect for the guys who were that six lineman kind of guy that would occasionally catch a ball out of the flat or something like that and help the quarterback that was scrambling out. So, got to give it up to Gary Shirk, who, again, 7 years with the team. Unfortunately, like I said, didn't quite make it to the really good years there, but was there as a part of help of the rebuild, because he was there at the beginning when the Giants were ending their streak of being, basically an embarrassment in the NFL like they were for a lot of years. And then was there for the start of Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick and all taking over. So all right. Number 8. Oh, yes.
Which may have knocked number 7 off his high horse, or number 9 off his high horse.
He definitely didn't help. That's for sure, because the time frames are going to match up here pretty well. Zeke Moat, undrafted free agent in 1983. So he basically went right from, being undrafted to replacing Gary Shirk there afterwards. So in his time frame with the Giants, 108 games. In those games, though, only 58 starts. He was a backup for a good portion of his career with us. 129 catches, 1,698 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Now, the big reason why he actually goes above Gary for me is the fact that he had 1 year that you saw the potential of what he could have done had he not had a knee injury and had he not gotten beaten out by somebody we may talk about later on in this program. Mr. Mark Bavaro may come up at some point. Who knows?
No spoilers or anything.
I don't want to spoil it. In 1984, he had 698 yards as a tight end. Keep in mind, a tight end in the 1980s. This was not a position like you see nowadays. 700 yards nowadays is good. Yeah.
He looked like Travis Kelce that year.
Yeah, he was in the top 10 of receiving tight ends in that season there. So, I mean, it's, nowadays it's still respectful. Back then, you were a top 10 tight end doing that kind of receiving. So, afterwards, obviously, he got beaten out by Mark Bavaro, who was drafted in 85 and took the starting lineup because Zeke had an injury. So, he never got that starting spot back, obviously. We haven't talked about Mark Bavaro, so obviously you guys know he's higher than Zeke is on the list. And I think you'll all be shocked and flipping out if he wasn't. So in the
Fair
end,
enough.
Yeah. So in the end, he just was a good backup guy who still got some yards on there on a consistent basis. Was able to show some of his blocking technique there over the years. And unfortunately didn't have the best end to his career. He was actually ended his career as a Patriot, and there were some allegations of him and some of his teammates actually being nude and harassing a woman in the locker room. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that part. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I don't know how true
like
that
I said,
is.
that's we were wee babies when that happened. So it was 1990.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too much into the weeds of that one there. But yeah, I mean, a guy that again had some good years with us there, and was a part of Super Bowl winning team with us as well. So anytime you win a ring, fans are always going to remember you fondly, obviously, because we always remember the good years. You can tell everybody who the starting lineup is on the Super Bowl years. You don't necessarily want to talk about the ones when, it's a
They weren't
3-13 season. So
Yeah.
he was a part of the 86 team. Ironically enough, 1990, which was our second Super Bowl season there, he was a Patriot that year and then went back to the Giants the year after. So he missed the 1 year he didn't play for the Giants. He missed his chance to get that second ring. So, but yeah, like I said, number 8 there, Zeke Mowat. On to number 7. Number
I'm
7.
partial.
I listen, number 7, for those of y'all that are our age here, in 30s and early 40s there, this is a guy that you're gonna have some fondness for. Much more fondness probably than the guy that's going to follow him. I think some people are going to be a little upset on this list potentially.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at it and I'm like, it's a fair assessment. Like, at
It really
the end of the day, you can't.
It
You
really
can't put
is.
the bias in there.
But we're going to get to that in a second. Let's not
Yeah.
jump the gun. Let's not give the spotlight to number 6 before we get into number 7 here.
We didn't even name number 7 yet.
Number 7, Kevin Boss, 5th round pick in 2007. Played with the Giants from 2007 to 2010. And it's weird because it feels like he had a longer career with us than he actually had. It feels like he was a Giant for quite a long time.
Really does.
I think we all got kind of attached to him in that time period. 58 games started. 58 games overall, 45 starts, 119 catches, 1,600 yards even, which is weird. How hard is that to hit even on that?
Yes.
18 touchdowns. And he was, of course, a one-time Super Bowl champion there with the New York Giants. And, yeah, I mean, a guy that, like I said, again, if you're our generation, you're going to hold this guy to pretty high esteem because he was an amazing security blanket for Eli Manning. He was a decent run blocker as well for the whole run game, which obviously was still a big part of the team back then, with Bradshaw and with Jacobs there, a couple guys we talked about already in the running back episodes there. But just was that lunch pail kind of guy. Like, did his work. Yeah. You never really heard him off the field. Just did his thing. Was dependable. Was always there when you needed him. Whether it was a third down reception, was that key block in the run game. Just did his job. Point blank. So,
like you said, never heard anything from this guy. Just put his head down. What's work? You want me to block for this? You want me to block for that? Oh, you want me to catch this one? All right, whatever. That's cool. Yeah. You want to do play action fake to me and pump it to the next guy? Okay, that's cool. Whatever.
Exactly. Okay. So, as we got our comment here from Deb saying, I liked Boss. I don't remember what happened to him. If I remember correctly, I'm looking it up right now for you. Yeah, he went to the Oakland Raiders in 2011. Had an okay season with them. Then went to Kansas City as well. Only played 2 games and was done. And that was the last he played. So I don't know if it was the end of his career because of an injury or just kind of talent dropped off a little bit. I mean, that stuff unfortunately does happen randomly for people. I'm looking it up right now. He was expected to share the starting tight end role, and then they released him basically because he just didn't catch on, didn't take on that role. So yeah. That's all it was just didn't get the chance. And they had signed him to a 3-year deal. And he played 2 games with them, never saw the field again, and then they cut him. So, yeah.
How much was that guaranteed?
I don't even know, to be very frank.
We didn't have to get to that, but
well, I mean, we're not going that far into the weeds here with
Just saying that might not be a bad listen, you don't want to go like that, but it also might not be a bad thing. Oh, all right. I lost a job. You're still gonna pay me for 2 years so I can hang out with my family.
Seriously, I'm good at that point. You're going to pay me like that? I'll go ahead and do that all day long.
Yeah.
So we got another comment from Connor as well. It says, "Big boss man, why can't you hear me when I call? All right, you know you ain't so big. I said you're just tall. That's all right." I feel like, okay, he just said here Elvis reference. I'm like, I feel like he's referencing a song, and I don't go the song.
I almost thought you meant Big Boss Man from WWF.
I thought that's where he
WWE.
was going. It was WWF back then. You can still say with the pandas won't sue us.
The Big Boss Man with the nightstick.
That was like when all like the wrestlers looked like they just robbed a Party City.
Some of them still look like that.
It's the truth, and you know it.
Ultimate Warrior.
Oh yeah, no, he robbed a meth dealer or cocaine dealer, I should say. That man had way too much energy.
Yeah, I did. Him and Hogan in a Houlihan's bathroom.
As Deb says, hard to predict where Connor is going. Yeah, you're not wrong in that one. Connor, you're a unique man. Keep it up. All righty. On to number 6. So I think, and we kind of alluded to this already in the beginning here. We talked about number 7 here. I think he's not thought of as fondly as Kevin Boss is. But if we're being honest and we take out the issues we had with him and just look at the body of work, he's the better player.
I mean, also, some fans were talking about maybe trying to bring him back about 6-7 months ago.
And listen, I was for it. And I didn't think he would want to come back, but I was for it. Number 6, Evan Ingram, 23rd overall pick in 2017. Played with the Giants from 17 to 21. In that time frame, folks, this is what I want you guys to see. I don't think people remember this sometimes because he spent so much time. We focus on the drop passes or the injuries. 65 games, 51 starts, 262 catches, 2,828 yards, 16 touchdowns, 1 Pro Bowl. In his time frame with the Giants, he was 8th amongst receiving yards with amongst tight ends. So again, we're talking about before with that one season with Zeke. You know, we talked about it with the 3 seasons with Joe Walton. This is now for his, 5 seasons he had with the Giants. He was top 10 tight end receiving wise. He was not the good blocker, which is what prevents him from going a little higher.
I was going to say, like, he's kind of the polar opposite of how number 7 was. Like, Kevin Boss was a great blocker, did what he had to do. Evan Ingram, it was your receiving tight end.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Kevin Boss was like the guy who was like, he's good at things, and he's good at a lot of things, but he's not great at anything. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't an amazing blocker. He wasn't an amazing receiver.
He was a jack of all trades, master or none.
Yeah. But Evan Ingram, now you're talking about a guy who was an amazing receiver when he caught the ball.
I was about to say, when he caught the ball.
Listen, I get it. I get the flaws. But I think people need to recognize how good he was also as a New York Giant as well, and recognize the fact that on top of that, I think you have to talk about the coaching issues as well. Mm-hmm. 2 of those 5 years were with the Clapper himself there. Before that, how many coaches did this man go through in his time frame? He had the 2 years with Joe Judge. He had, the 2 years before that with why am I drawing a blank at his name now?
McAdoo.
I'm drawing a blank now. Why am I drawing a blank now?
Talking about McAdoo?
No, the OC we got from the Vikings that became the head coach for a couple.
Oh, Pat Shurmur.
Pat Shurmur, thank you. And then before that was the first year he was in the league. He had Ben McAdoo. So yeah, he had 3 head coaches in 5 years. We talk about the issues with the quarterback. I mean, having that system, it affects everybody. It affected him, especially when you had like one of the worst OCs for the last 2 years. And when he was healthy,
new schemes every time we go out of the field.
When he was healthy, he was good. As long as you got him to do what he could do. You had to think of more like we're going to use Waller this year. He's almost like an extra receiver, like an extra slot receiver out there that you might have him, hit the block on the way out or something like that. But he's not the guy like, okay, I need an extra blocker because my right tackle is having issues. Let's put Evan Ingram there. No, like that wasn't that guy.
No.
That was our next guy we're going to talk about in a minute. But again, what he was able to do, unfortunately, we didn't utilize correctly. Let's be very frank on that. The Giants let him down just as much as he let down the Giants with some of the catches that he, should have had and missed, especially, a couple that he had against the Eagles one year, remember specifically. But, last year he got out of the Giants and had his best season ever. He had 73 catches, 766 yards as a Jaguar.
As I say, as a Jag.
Not a good look when the Jaguars are using talent better than we were. So, like I said, not a perfect player, and that's why he's not in the top 5. But I think he's a player that I think over time, I'm hoping that Giants fans will look back on and go, okay, he wasn't as bad as we thought. We were just kind of pissed off at the whole team and the situation in general. Because that's the truth of the situation.
Yeah,
I mean,
we pretty much were kind of in a slump. It was Eli on his out years, if you will. Didn't play so well. We had the whole thing going with McAdoo. And then now you got this tight end that's supposed to be great that's dropping some balls, but everyone forgot how many yards he actually got while he was with us.
Yeah.
How many catches?
And there's a lot he caught. There's a lot he caught. And the offense looked a whole lot better when he was healthy. A whole 100%. Lot better. All righty. On to number 5. A man that pretty much never caught the ball.
Yeah.
We're talking about old school blocking tight ends. Here's your old school blocking tight end. Number 5. And we actually had a question about this a minute ago because Connor said, got on late. Did we say Howard Cross yet? And Deb says Cross has to be in top 5. Guess what? He is. He's at number 5. His Connor also says, definitely okay, cool. Haven't missed you yet. Thanks, Deb. And then laughs about the clapper. Howard Cross, comes clap. In. Oh, God. Howard Cross does come in at number 5 for a 6th-round pick in 1989. He played with the Giants from 1989 to 2001. That's a hell of a good long career. That's
especially
12
as a tight
seasons.
end.
12. Oh, that's even more, actually. That's
13.
Yeah, 13 seasons with the New York Giants. Played the 3rd most games as a Giant in the entire team's history, behind only Eli Manning and Michael Strahan.
It's good company.
That's damn good company to have. Played in the last Parcells Super Bowl, as well as the loss to the Ravens Super Bowl. Let's think about that stretch for a minute. Like that's a hell of a stretch to go that long with one team. In his career, 207 games as a Giant, 171 starts. In those, and this is what you're going to see. Really,
this is I was about to say. This is where we just talked about a high and bring in the low.
Yeah, we talked about one guy was really good at catching a minute ago, and this guy's really good at blocking. Yeah, here we go. It's like if you could have combined Evan Ingram and Howard Cross, you would have the perfect tight end. So again, 171 starts, only 201 catches for 2,194 yards, 17 touchdowns on his career.
You know what's sad is that the yards and catches is about 40% of what Ingram had with his time there, and this guy spent 13 years compared to Ingram's 5 years.
Well, no, he had. So you're saying
I'm just saying if you put in statistically what they had each year.
Yeah, so
it's
he
about
had
40% of what Ingram averaged.
He had over 3 times as many starts as Evan Ingram had, and he had 60 less catches. Yeah.
And 700 less yards, 600 less yards,
about 500 less yards. 700 yards. Yeah, about 650 actually. I should say about 650 less yards again. In 3 times the starts. He wasn't that guy. He was a blocking tight end. He was an old school, like a third tackle basically on the field. And his main job was to help keeping holes open for guys like Rodney Hampton, Tiki Barber, so having, help block for 2 of the best running backs. In fact, the 2 guys we ranked as the top 2 running backs in New York Giants history. So, as we got John S. Anderson Jr. chiming in again, he says, What's that shirt, Roberto? Cash chicks? You paying the hookers again?
No, because it's championships at the bottom.
Oh, see, it's a gambling thing. It's not a
No, it's not
prostitution
gambling.
thing. What is it? What is it?
It's a jiu-jitsu thing.
It's a jiu-jitsu thing. He's gambling on jiu-jitsu, John.
So when you win medals, you win cash, the chicks, and the championships.
Oh, okay. I got it. Women like the winners.
That's it.
I didn't win very often, so I was on a
And for all you hip guys, the emojis.
Oh yes, the hip guys. Also not for me. I don't think being hip is anything I've been called in my life.
Don't be a square
Alrighty,
man.
guys. It's hip to be square. All right, on to our next guy here. Number 4. We're just going to run through this list here tonight. Aaron Thomas, originally drafted by the 49ers in the 4th round in 1961. Played with the New York Giants midway through the 62 season up until 1970. That's a decent career there. Now, remember I said earlier that we're going to talk about a guy who basically was the size of a wide receiver and that just the game was different back in the day? So they were called tight ends, but in reality, they were receivers on the line. That's what they were. So because of the fact that he was called the tight end, that was the position, we're going to still have him on the list. But I do want to point out he was 6'3", 210 pounds. I don't think he was really blocking anybody. I think that's fair to say.
Especially again, back in that day, when
was
it's just back in the biggest guy on the line.
Yeah, but again, like I said, that was the position at the time, so we're going to call it like it is at that point there. 117 games, 79 starts, 247 catches, 4,253 yards, 35 touchdowns. Not too bad of numbers there. As you know, one Pro Bowl, 1964. In his time frame, his best year was actually 1967, which is a little weird.
Usually you degress as you get older.
No, what I'm saying is he was a Pro Bowler in 64, but his best year was 67. That's a little weird.
Oh, yeah.
So, 1967, he had the 7th most receiving yards and the 6th most touchdowns in the NFL. Not amongst tight ends, in the NFL. He had 877 yards and 9 touchdowns, which, again, tells you guys how different the NFL was when you were top 10 in those stats. You're not even top on your team sometimes with that.
That's crazy. We've been going through these top 10 players and just looking at these old-time players, just going back to the history of the NFL, how it just kept on evolving and going back and forth.
But this is why I keep on stressing, it's important not just to look at the stats they put up, but to look at the stats they put up against their peers, because the times were different. He had, like I said, a different goal, so to speak. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was, nowadays at all. So in his time frame, like I said, he was a really good receiver that just happened to play close to the line like a tight end. The position was called a tight end, but he didn't block. But he also had the 5th most receiving yards of anybody in that tight end position. I got to use some quotes here. I feel like I have to because he didn't block. Tight end position in the 1960s.
He's definitely not a Belgian.
So he was. Yeah, he was definitely no Howard Cross.
Yeah.
So, like I said, he wasn't the guy that you depended on for that, but for the time frame he was, and he wasn't the only guy playing the position that way. That was a normal thing back in the 60s. He was one of the best at it. So we're going to put him here, number 4. He actually still holds the Giants' record for most receiving TDs by any tight end.
I mean, he had an impressive amount, so.
I have to like that still.
Yeah.
I have to do the quotes thing. Tight end. All righty. On to number 3. Now, I think we talked about Evan Ingram and the fact that we had him on the list. And that
animosity.
Some fans, yes. I think this next one is going to upset some fans as well. And
Dan, if you're on, earmuffs.
I did not put this guy where I thought I was going to put him initially in this list until we did some homework and we're like, hold on a second. there's a guy in Giants history that's not talked about quite enough, and actually had the better career than who we're about to talk about. So,
It's because he was a little bit attitude.
no, I'm saying, well, this guy had attitude number 3, but number 2
Yeah.
did not. So, let's see. We got a couple more comments too. John says, "Sweet, teach me Roberto-san." He says, "Cross has some big hands too. Met him once. I said you should coach. That's a headache, man. I like giving them, not getting them. The headaches are. Were you trying to?
Oh yeah, he likes giving the headaches instead of getting them because he didn't want to be coach.
Okay, I thought he was trying to seduce him or something.
Oh. No, you knock someone on their ass. You're going to give them a headache.
All right, number 3, Jeremy Shockey, 14th overall pick in 2002. Played for the Giants from 2002 to 2007. In his time period, he had 371 catches, 4,228 yards, 27 touchdowns, 4-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro. Holds the record for most receptions in a single season by any Giants tight end, as well as the record for most receptions for a career for any Giants tight end. Third most receiving yards amongst all tight ends in his time as a Giant, behind only Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates. That's some damn good company.
Yeah, and those guys, I want to say, were in the league probably a couple more seasons than Jeremy Shockey.
Oh, what I'm saying is, yeah, they were definitely, but I'm saying just from 02 to 07. I just looked up those stats.
Okay.
In that time period, that's the only 2 guys who had more yards receiving in the tight end position between 2002 and 2007, which was Shockey's time with us there.
And then when he become, he went to the Saints, no?
He went to the Saints for a while, and I want to say he spent 1 year with the Panthers as well. There was a lot of rumors floating around, actually, that Shockey was the one who blew the horn, if you remember the whole issue with the Bounty Gate down in New Orleans. That was the rumor that it was him. But I've never, never heard that it was actually he was, and that's why people are saying that. So 2011, yeah, he did play 1 year with the Panthers. Actually had a pretty good year. Had 455 yards in 15 games. So I'm not sure why his career ended, unless it just got to the point where he was too much of a headache.
I mean, he also said,
we know what Shockey was. Shockey was absolutely
a hothead.
Huh?
I said he was a hothead.
What was that? Oh, yeah. He was electrifying as all hell in the field, but he was a guy that had his personality flaws, and we all knew it. He was a larger-than-life personality. New York loved him when things were going well. But once he started cooling down a little on his stats and things weren't going as well, I think he couldn't take that, to be very frank with you. I think New York just kind of ate him up at that point. You have to be very strong-minded to beat through the bad times in New York. Because, I mean, his rookie season was his best season he had with us. He had 900 yards, basically was all-pro, along being, second, was the runner-up for the Offensive Rookie of the Year, but then had 500 yards, 600 yards before going back to 800 yards and starting again. So he had 2 seasons after that he just wasn't as good. We all know about the issues we talked about with, Tiki Barber and how he was talking trash about Eli on his way out the door. If I remember correctly, there was a similar situation with Shockey as well, or it was assumed that there was some beef between the two of them because of how well the team got together after he left the team along with Tiki. So, again, great player.
I always assumed it wasn't that it was just him and Eli. It was Shockey
him and the
versus everyone else.
Yeah. Great player. Absolute great player. But you have to question some of the personality issues and how much that affected the team, because the team really didn't play that good with him for quite a good amount of that stretch there. He wasn't there for the best of the Collins years. He was there for the tail end of the Collins years. He was there for the half a season of Kurt Warner. He was there for the beginning of Eli. He wasn't really there for the great years, but he was the biggest star on the Giants for a little while. I mean, this guy was on the cover of magazines. I remember as a kid and stuff like that. As a kid, he's like my age, so I mean, I guess he was about 20 at the time. Because he's 42. I looked it up out of curiosity. He's 42, so he's only like a year and a couple months older than me.
And he's retired, Drew. We did it wrong.
Listen, I always said, I wish I'd learned to kick the ball. Kick the ball. And I'll tell you that if I did learn to kick the ball, I know to punt the ball better than our punter. Just saying.
Corners.
Oh, yeah. Calling it. All right. So, yeah, like I said, Jeremy Shockey, number 3. And like I said, I think some fans will probably say he should be number 2. I think they're going to be I think some people are probably listening and going, wait a minute. I think I know who number 1 is. I think most people assume who number 1 is. Let's be honest. But then it begs the question of who would be number 2 if it's not Jeremy Shockey, because I think most people actually would have Jeremy Shockey at number 2. And if they do have Jeremy Shockey at number 2, they're wrong. Because number 2 is Bob Tucker. Bob Tuckaroo. Had a little bit of an odd introduction to the NFL. So played college at Bloomsburg University. Again, weird-ass schools that we're getting these players from. Went on to play in the Atlantic Coast Football League. Again, another guy who started went some small schools, started off one of the off leagues, and then went ahead and ended up playing for the New York Giants. So he played with the Giants and started in 1970. I want to put the 2000. I always want to put the 2000. It's a while ago.
It's only 23 years in the 2000s. There's way more than 19 years.
Yeah, 1970. To midway through the 1977 season when he was traded away. I almost want to say it again. In his time frame with the New York Giants, 100 games, 98 starts, 327 catches, 4,376 yards, 22 touchdowns. Now, you may look at that and going, okay, hold on. He played about the same time as Jeremy Shockey. Numbers are a little bit better. It would probably be a tough call. And I'm going to say point blank, it wasn't for me because of the difference in the generation. The numbers were similar. Bob Tucker played in the 70s when tight ends weren't that big of a thing there like that. Like besides, the occasional, stud kind of tight end like a Mike Ditka, who I know people think is as the Bears coach, but he was also a great Bears tight end and actually played for the Cowboys for a little bit as well. And he was kind of the first tight end to do what's more modern tight end things to do. And he had guys like Ozzie Newsome, and guys like that later on in the 80s and all started breaking out. Bob Tucker played in the 1970s when it just wasn't a thing to go ahead and play that position like that. So he had the second most receptions in the entire NFL in 1971 as a tight end. Has the most receiving yards of any Giants tight end still. Good, almost 50 years after, almost half a century after he retired. The third most receiving yards of any player in the 1970s. Most by any tight end in the 1970s. Yeah. Number 2. You're beating Shockey at that point. It's the generational difference. He put up Shockey numbers in a time
when no one played like Shockey.
Exactly. While also looking a little like looking at a young picture of your grandfather. Like it looks like that's the weird thing about doing this going back in the time looking at the old players. You get the whole like hair part on the side and all that kind of stuff. like that kind of old school picture. Like you look at it now and go, that guy doesn't play football.
He looks so prim and proper.
And he played it well. Interesting little side note I thought as well is later on in life, he actually, and I don't know what exact time periods, but I read this and I thought, Rob would definitely find this interesting as well, being that he was, born and raised in the same town I was there. He was actually living in Lincroft for quite a while, which, of course, also the same county Rob and I are from, Monmouth County. For all I know, he's still there because he actually is still alive, 77 years old. One of the very few of the Giants greats that we've come across that are still alive.
He has to deal with that community college traffic.
Yeah. Oh yes, good old Brookdale College, as we call it in the home area there.
University.
UCLA, the university closest to the Lincroft area. But yeah, like I said, I just ask Giant fans that aren't aware of Bob Tucker, look up some tape, look at some of the stuff this man did, because he was an amazing player for his generation. He was a guy that, you know, we talk quite often about Giants that we should probably be in the Hall of Fame.
Here's one.
Led all tight ends in receiving yards in the 1970s. Think you should get in the Hall of Fame for that? Third most receiving yards of any player in the 1970s. You think you should be in the Hall of Fame for that? In the end, the problem was he was in that stretch where the Giants were a laughing stock in the 1970s. This is before the NFL. Yeah, this is before the NFL stepped in and basically forced the Mara family hand to go ahead and hire George Young. He was there right towards the end of that. I mean, I think 79 was when they hired George Young, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
So this is 77 is when he got traded away. So it's right towards the very end of that. But again, Bob Tucker, one of the, I think, kind of the forgotten New York Giants for what he did for this franchise and for how good a player he was for many years for us there. So let's see, we got a couple more comments here as well. As John says, shock attack. Then says, love how you break tackles, lose his helmet after bashing the defenders, and yell back at guys. That was fun to watch from Jeremy.
It was.
Shockey. Like I said, fiery on the field. If he wasn't such a jerk off the field, I think he would have had a much longer career.
If he left all that fire on the field,
yeah,
he definitely would have been a Giant a lot longer.
Because as we're talking about, I kind of remember, I think the story was that he didn't have a bad year with the Panthers, but he was a free agent, but nobody wanted to sign him because of the Deflategate thing. He was kind of blamed for leaking that. And again, no one's ever shown any
not
proof
Deflategate,
not Deflategate. I'm sorry. Yeah. Bounty Gate. Wrong gate. Bounty Gate. But it was always
he let up Watergate.
Yeah. It was the rumor that he did that he was the deep throat of the NFL, basically. But no one ever had proof of that. But that was considered it was considered one of those taboo things. You don't let it leave the locker room, And again, not that I was ever any good in football myself, but that was the written rule even when you're in high school. What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. So his career just was over afterwards. John says, still talking about Scottish Hammer? He's going to punch you in the buttocks one day if he watches the show, LOL. Listen, if he does, he'll pump me right out of the end
down
zone.
The middle.
Yeah, right down the middle, right out the end zone. That's for sure. No worries about a coffin corner for me. Did you say Ditka? Ditka.
We're talking about the small Ditka or the large
The big
Ditka?
I love this running back. Let's give up my whole draft for him.
All right.
John says, must have some strong blue blood pumping through that blue heart. And says, time to spread the word, get him in the Hall of Fame. Listen, I think 100% we should. I 100% think this guy should be in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, we're going to do a whole episode at one point on guys who are not in the Hall of Fame that are New York Giants that should
be our rant.
Be in the Hall of Fame. Oh, it'll be a ranting like you would not believe. I'm telling you right now, that is going to be like the rant. And I'm actually looking it up because I'm actually curious if he's in the Giants Ring of Honor. Because I don't even know if he is or not, to be very frank with you. And he definitely should be. I'm looking it up right now. I'm on the page. And guess what? I do not see Bob Tucker on the Ring of Honor for the New York Giants. So I think that's the first place we got to get him to. Because that's pretty goddamn impressive to go ahead and lead, for an entire decade, spend most of that decade and not get in to the Hall of Fame, to the Ring of Honor with the team you played most of that decade with. That's kind of bad. I'm wondering, and I'll say it this way as well, because again, sometimes you get to these older players like that, not a lot of the info gets out there online. So if anybody who's maybe a little longer in the tooth than Rob and I has any memories of what happened at the end, like was it a bad breakup? Is that where we traded him away? Feel free to share it, because again, we're talking years before Rob and I were even born, let alone
before.
watching football. Yeah, so
Way before my time.
put in the comments section, email us at twogiantgoofballs@mail.com. Feel free to post a comment there. Like I said, I'm kind of curious. There's got to be something we don't know of just because of our age in that respect. Because for him not to be the Giants Ring of Honor, as John Anderson says here, he should be. That's bullshit, and it is. That's
100%.
crazy. That's crazy. Maybe we should start writing to the Giants. You never know.
Yeah.
Leonard Marshall got in. A lot of people think it's because the players, different people that are flipping out because he wasn't in yet. All right. On to number one, though, who is in the Giants Ring of Honor. Number one.
Yippee.
Kenny Galladay. No. Mark Bavaro, 4th round pick in 1985. For his career, 82 games, 80 starts, 266 catches, 4,733 yards, 39 touchdowns.
That was with 6 seasons from 85 to 90 with the Giants.
Yes. And in the end, he had his first 4 seasons in the league were just absolutely amazing. First 4 seasons, he averaged 53 catches, 763 yards per season, 5 touchdowns. The most yards and touchdowns by a tight end in that time frame. The 4th most catches. He was the best tight end in the late 80s in the entire league, flat out. Anybody wants to dispute that, go for it. You'll lose. And unfortunately, it was just the late 80s. It was kind of a short run he had of that. 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. The only Giant ever to get 1,000 yards receiving for the tight end position. The only Giant. That's pretty damn impressive. So obviously, it goes without saying that he holds the record for most yards in a season as a New York Giants tight end there. He finished 6th place in the MVP race in 1986. You don't hear tight ends being mentioned as an MVP.
No, not at all.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He had the 3rd most receiving touchdowns in the entire NFL in 1987. Not amongst tight ends. The entire NFL, he had the 3rd most receiving touchdowns.
He was the late 80s Travis Kelce.
He still also holds the record for most touchdowns in a single season by a New York Giants tight end. And as I've heard already a couple people mentioned, his nickname, Rambo. His name was not John, though.
Yeah, there'll be blood.
All I wanted was some food.
He wanted some beach. Come home.
Oh my god, those movies were so good. They didn't really work. That was like the pinnacle of like Stallone's career. As much as everybody thinks it's Spy Kids.
I was gonna go Rocky, but okay.
I still like Rambo better than Rocky. I don't know. I just do. I can't help it.
I mean,
it's a little more classic action movie.
Yes. Granted, the first movie was definitely taken out of context from the book.
I never read the book. I couldn't say. Hooked on Phonics did not work for me.
Especially back when it came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
Before you were staying on your daddy shorts.
Yes.
As Mark would say.
Back to Mark Bavaro. So we got a couple comments here. So Deb says, I remember watching a highlight tape and Bavaro, known for being a loner, made a play. And Parcells, standing in the silence, said, I wonder what that son of a bitch thinks about. John says, Rambo, they drew first blood, not me. See? Paul says, I always loved how Parcells would say, I wouldn't want to get in a fight with that guy. Yeah, because he's Rambo. Beef says, you guys nailed that one. He was a beast. That man could play, and he went out and played. And the big thing also was, I think, we're talking about receiving stats here in this episode because let's be very frank. What do you do? Hey, there's so many pancakes he had. I mean, like it's hard to do the blocking stats. A lot of that is an eye test thing.
Yeah, I was about to say you really can't measure that, and it's also hard to compare. Like, how much did that block help the run get off the field, or give your quarterback enough time to pass that ball?
Yeah, it really is difficult. But I'll say that we, from our time frame, got to see half these guys play. Mark Bavaro was one of them. And granted, I was a kid at the time, but I've gone back and watched a lot of these tapes over the years because, again, he was there for the Big Blue Wrecking Crew time period, the best Giants, teams ever. No disrespect to the people that were there with the Eli Manning teams, but the LT, Phil Simms, Mark Bavaro teams were better.
Yeah,
flat out better than the Eli teams. Bavaro was that guy. Like, he was amazing receiver. He was an amazing blocker. He was Tony Gonzalez before Tony Gonzalez. He was that good.
It's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he had a small stretch. Didn't have the longevity that a guy like Tony Gonzalez had, who's got to be considered potentially, the greatest tight end of all time. He's definitely in the conversation.
He's definitely in there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can go Gronk, Kelsey, whatever as well in there potentially. But, I mean, Mark Bavaro, though, was that good in the late 80s there like that. He was that guy that you knew you had to stop. You had no clue how to stop him. The guy be bleeding. I remember was like a picture of him like sitting on the bench, like bleeding from his nose, like right at the bridge of his nose. Just kept on going. Didn't care. Just didn't care.
Yeah. Oh, I need 7 stitches. Get it after the game.
And he was a big guy, and he played big. He wasn't like this. There's some guys you see that are just big, and they still kind of play a little soft. And there's other guys that just play, and you're like, he's a big guy. So 6'4", 245 pounds. He's a big guy. Yeah. So, he unfortunately didn't have the career that we all hoped he would have because of the injuries that he had. But in the end, yeah, I mean, that's still a hell of a career he had. As Beef says, if I remember right, he blew his knee out. It was never the same after that. He had actually a degenerative knee condition and had knee issues all over throughout his career, but it was actually a degenerative issue he had overall with his knee. It wasn't the football. The football playing football on his knees didn't probably help, but it was just overall a genetic degenerative issue there. So they actually, especially they cut him eventually about. He barely practiced his last season as a Giant as well. He was told by his doctors when the Giants cut him, because remember, he didn't end his career as a New York Giant. He was told basically not to play. And he still went ahead and played. They just loved the sport that much, that kind of old school football mentality. So he missed the 91 season entirely, came back, played 1 year with the Browns, then 2 years with the Eagles. But in the end, one hell of a career with the New York Giants there. And I did realize something. I made a mistake earlier when I gave some numbers as I'm looking at Sutton. I gave his numbers as 4,733. That was his whole career. With the Giants, actually was 3,772. So still one hell of a career, impressive. Having just a 6-year stretch. Yeah. Like I said, I just want to clarify that because I did say earlier that Bob Tucker was the all-time leader in career yards as a tight end, and he definitely was. We got Scott stops by, so just wanted to stopping by to say hi. Hi, guys. Hi, Scott.
Hi. Howdy.
And then John says, Rambo went to Rocky Land, LOL. Kind of funny when you think about it. I feel like I'm missing something in this. Rambo went to Rocky Land?
Well, I guess in First Blood.
Is that the name of the town? I'm forgetting that. It's been a couple years since I've watched it.
It's been a while.
With Brian Dennehy. Oh, yes. They should make more movies like that. Just more like action movies. I like action movies. I just saw they released a trailer for the 4th Expendable today.
Yeah, and it's going to be rated R again.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. It should be.
Well, the third one, it was PG-13 because they wanted to get more people in the seats.
Yeah.
And
Totally
forgetting
12-year-old over to Expendables.
Oh, that's it. Totally forgetting about the target audience was that a whole bunch of kids like us in the 80s want to go see shit get blown up.
Yeah, I mean,
with cheesy one-liners.
Let's be honest. Anybody who's 12 years or younger has no clue the hell half the people are in that movie.
No. Why are you watching a movie with a whole bunch of old people?
These old guys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. So again, rundown. Let's go to the final rundown of the list here. So we got Joe Walton, number 10, Gary Schick, number 9, Zeke Moat, number 8, Kevin Boss, number 7, number 6, Evan Ingram, number 5, Howard Cross, number 4, Aaron Thomas, number 3, Jeremy Shockey, number 2, Bob Tucker, and again, our number 1, the best tight end to ever play for the New York Football Giants, Mark Bavaro. Mark Bavaro.
Thanks, Bavaro.
Alrighty, guys. Yes. So tomorrow night, guys, we're going to be giving you guys the rundown on this week's OTAs. As we promised, we do like once a week there, go over that with you guys. So you guys get all the info, but don't give the way into the weeds of things you don't care about. Let's be frank. Some of the stuff I've listened to people do with the episodes specifically on each podcast, and it's like, well, they threw to this person. They caught it. They should have caught it. They did. It's like they're looking for things to talk about. Yeah, they're trying to find things to talk about. So we'll have that on for you guys, like I said, because it's easier to do a couple practices in one shot. Now, after that, Friday is the last OTA before in a couple weeks the mini camp opens up. So Monday we'll probably do an episode giving you guys kind of a rundown of that episode on that practice, as well as also a final rundown and final thoughts on the OTAs as a whole. So, and then we'll go back into a couple weeks. We'll have to go ahead and go back into this series here and give you guys the rest of the greatest people to ever wear the New York Football Giants jersey there. We got a lot still to go. We got the whole offensive line to go. We got some pass rushers to talk about. You think we might have some good pass rushers to talk about there, Rob?
I think so.
You think?
Yeah.
I think we might have some pass rushers there. Look. John says, oh, yeah, Thursdays now. It's okay to do Fridays again. Blue Bloods is in hiatus. Blue Bloods is still on TV? My God. Is it just starring Tom Selleck's mustache at this point? Show's been on forever.
We're just here for a paycheck.
Yes. We must catch the criminal. Rah, rah, rah. Mustache.
Yeah, pretty much.
John says, love Blue Bloods. Best show on TV. What's TV? We stream, not just on here. We stream. I know. I think Rob, you're on the same boat, right? We're both the streamers. We don't have cable.
No cable.
No nothing. Luckily, this year we can start doing.
I mean, I do have a TV. It's just I stream it through my Fire Stick.
Yeah, luckily now we can do YouTube TV and watch all the Sunday tickets because that's what I plan on doing this year. So obviously, so we were talking about this year, we're going to do live broadcast during the game even. So we can now do that because even here in Florida now, without doing BS of direct TV, we can get the Giants games. Oh, yes.
Don't worry about that satellite dish.
John says, got to look into that. Cable costs like $300. It's BS. Yeah. Just get internet. That's all you need. Internet, a cell phone, and streaming. That's it. So, alrighty, guys, we're talking too much now about cable.
Yeah.
We can help you save on your monthly bills. Again, guys, appreciate you all for listening in. If you like the show and you want to sponsor the show, if you look down at the bottom here, it says like the show, support it at buymeacupofcoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. That's buymeacupofcoffee.com/2 giant goofballs. Again, we appreciate everybody listening in today. We will see you all tomorrow night as we go ahead and talk about the OTAs here. OTAs. And as always,
Go G-Man!
Oh, you just skipped. You just wow.
I got excited, man. You got me excited.
You got way excited there. Way excited. Yeah.
Jumped the gun.
Like a kid at a strip club here.
That was.
Anyway, as always, Giant fans, go G-Man!
Go G-Man! G-Man!
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support. If you made it this long, you must have enjoyed it. So I am sure you have followed us on all the social media platforms. Of course, you have subscribed to the show on your favorite app as well and given us a top rating. Right? Right? Right?